Hello and welcome back to A Slightly Twisted Female. I'm your host, Brittany Rue, and today I am here with somebody that I am so excited to have on the channel I'm really glad that she agreed to do this. Somebody who I discovered in Philadelphia. I was sitting at a bar after this amazing woman came up and just blasted this powerful inspirational voice that just somehow seemed to take all of the noise and the chaos of these tranarchists and almost turn it into like this beautiful background music. So whatever it was that you did, you somehow turned their craziness into like some sort of background music. And for your amazing message, I sat next to her afterwards, talked to her for a little bit. We all had gone to a bar just to decompress. And I discovered that that woman who totally took the house down was a woman named Gabrielle Clark. And she is so you're in Texas now, right?
Yes. I live in Houston, Texas. I'm from here.
Okay.
I moved back in January.
So this is a Texan mother who was, raising children and started to realize that we have a real problem in our public school system with the indoctrination of children into ideology that has nothing to do with preparing these kids for school. So without further ado, I want to welcome Gabrielle Clark. She has been touring the country, going out from city to city, bringing our message of gender critical feminism and, safeguards for children and women's rights. And I'm just so glad to have her on our team. She's like the mom we all wish we had. So I want to welcome Gabrielle Clark.
Thank you so much for having me, Brittany. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So tell me about, how did you get started in this? What made you just this passionate woman that you are today about protecting kids against indoctrination?
Well, my son was being discriminated against at school. And it was originally with my daughter. I noticed after the Summer of Love situation, with all the riots and all of that, there was a big push for critical race theory in schools. And when my daughter was in her classrooms, there was a real shift in the way that the teachers were teaching their children, the children. And we were doing distance learning, of course. So all of this stuff was going on in our living room. And some of the things that I was hearing, I was just mortified about. So I told my daughter to leave those classes, and I found her a new school. And because they were going to the same charter school, I went to my son and I told him what happened with his sister. And I asked if anything was happening like that in his class. And he said, well, no. And because he didn't understand how these things were connected.
Right.
He said, but there's this thing happening. And he showed me what was going on in his class. When he explained to me some of the things that were going on, I was just shocked. There was a SpongeBob meme that was talking about. It said reverse racism doesn't exist, and my son, he told his class. He said, "Well, anybody can be racist," and that got him into something like a struggle session, in his classroom.
That's crazy.
So when I looked through the curriculum, when I looked through everything, the slides and everything going on in the class, that was when I saw some really, really disturbing classroom assignments. One of which was he was instructed to list his identities, his race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity,
Wow.
all of those things. And then he was to attach signifiers to those identities, the signifiers of privileged or oppressed. Now at the time, William William was sleeping on a mat on the floor in a dirty motel in Las Vegas
Wow.
because I had just recovered from being in a wheelchair for several years,
Wow.
and we lost everything. I'm half black and half white. My first husband was black. My second husband was white. So William is three-quarters white, blonde hair, blue eyes. He looks like a white dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because he's white and male, he's somehow privileged.
Wow.
But his dad died when he was a year old.
Wow.
His mother was black, is black. And he's got a job. He's got all of the, you know what I mean? He's doing all these things. He's sleeping on a mat on the floor
Wow.
in a dirty motel in Vegas. So how is that any kind of privilege?
What class was it for?
It was a class called Sociology of Change. It's a civics class.
And you
And
said it was required for graduation.
yes, it was required for graduation. So when I told the principal, I don't want him taking this class. Um, and the principal, they wouldn't let us opt out of the class. So I did everything that I was supposed to do, contacted all the right people, and no one did anything about it. So I filed a lawsuit.
Good for you.
Thank you. And in the time in the next 4 months, over the next 4 months, I was fighting for my son. It started to gain a lot of traction in the media and all over the education space because a lot of parents were experiencing that.
Right.
I did a lot of television appearances and discussion panels, that sort of thing, podcasts, and realized that this was happening to a lot of people, privilege walks, that sort of thing.
Right.
And,
What's a
and
privilege walk? I'm like horrified to find out. What is that?
a privilege walk is where you're supposed to like list your intersectional identities. The children are supposed to list their intersectional identities, and you like take a step if you're white, take another step if your parents went to college, take another step. So
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 everyone has to look, and everyone's watching you, so we can all point and look at, who are the privileged, and who's the oppressor, who is okay to attack, basically.
right. Who are the victims?
Right.
Who are the oppressors?
Wow.
And so, I mean, those are the kinds of things that had been going on all over the country, but people were too afraid to say anything. And when I realized this, that was when my real activism started. Um, a few months after we filed our lawsuit, the school had a change of heart, and they allowed William to opt out of his class. They expunged his record, thereby allowing him to graduate. He
Good.
has since graduated, but the damage had already been done. He should have been able to go to college with no problem, but this took a serious toll on our family.
Of course. Of course. He's supposed to be focusing on graduating and being with friends.
Right. So all the while that this was going on, I was doing advocacy and activism with an organization that helped me find my lawyers, and
And that
I
was the
did
left turn.
no left turn in education. That's right.
Okay.
And during that time, um, my daughter started to change. She started to really have some, serious emotional issues. She started identifying as non-binary, all of those things. And ultimately, when it got really, really bad, that was when I decided I have to save my daughter. Um, I was aware of the indoctrination that was happening, but I was not aware on the wide scale that it was taking place. She was in social emotional learning um, at her school, and when I realized that her school was complicit in this, in this, and even enabling and encouraging these things.
Wow.
That was when I said, you know what, I can't avoid rescuing my child and fleeing Nevada, because I was worried that they were going to deem me unsafe if I didn't affirm my child's transitioning.
Wow.
And the
Wow.
social transitioning, people think, oh, it's just a pronoun, it's just a name, and it's not that. It is much, much more than that. So
Well,
I
we know actually that upwards of 90% of children who express, some sort of incongruence with their gender identity and their biological sex will grow out of that, except if they are socially affirmed. If they
right.
are socially affirmed, the risk that that child will go on to medicalization goes up, something like fivefold.
It's exponentially a greater risk of medical intervention.
Right.
The social transitioning all on its own is very detrimental. I mean, it's, this part of this of social contagion is the same things that we used to see in girls with bulimia, anorexia, cutting,
Right.
those kinds of things. And there are elements of that. So I knew that if I stayed there, that I was going to end up being a test subject for the system to come and take my child and claim that I'm unsafe.
Wow.
So I fled Nevada back to my hometown of Houston, Texas, and I along with some of my family members devised a program to help my daughter to successfully desist. And that program is now being used by other people, and we have had success over the course of the last 3 months. We've had several families contact me and tell me that their children have successfully desisted using the program
Wow.
I
Where can
created.
we find out more information about that program? Do you have a name for it?
Yes, it's called Affirming Reality. So that is, you can find that on the Actively Unwoke website, and I will get you a link so that
Yeah,
you can.
afterwards, and for the whole chat who's listening, I'll make sure Gab gets me all of these links. I'll put them in the description of the video, because this is so important. And, even teaming other kinds of similarly minded resources for parents, and parents, I have such, the reason why I think I'm so particularly enraptured in what your story is because my kids are a few steps behind where your kids are. My oldest is just starting middle school, and I'm just starting to see these things. I remember the first day of middle school, my son came back and he's like, you know what, Mom, it's so crazy, it's really trendy to be LGBT at school. He goes, that's just like the new like cool thing. I just think that's, and he was in fifth grade.
Right.
And and I think about my daughter, my youngest daughter, who's 4, who's sort of like, more tomboyish. I have another daughter who loves princessy girly stuff. And then, my youngest daughter, even before I like had really peaked, she used to say things like, I'm a boy. And we used to like joke around, be like, oh, well, what do you want to be called then, John? Like, we used to be like, hey, John, like, come here. And we would laugh about it. And it was just funny. And we're like, no, you're not a boy. You know what I mean? Like, boys have penises, and we would just think it was funny. But then as I started learning more about this whole cult and trend and whatever it is, and realizing, oh my God, if I were in the wrong place and somebody heard her say that, or if she were at school saying the same thing, and I'm learning now that they can meet with your child privately behind your back,
Right.
drill them about whatever their identity is, and then ask that child, do you want to include mom and dad? And if not, we'll help, prepare you for how to keep this information from them.
Yes. And I encourage people, because let me tell you, this is not something a lot of people think, well, if I just talk to the school, then maybe. Well, no. If you talk to the school, they're going to deem you unsafe.
They're gonna flag you. They're gonna say,
They're
"Oh,
gonna
this parent's a
Yeah,
problem. Keep an eye
this
on this
parent is
one."
unsafe. I mean, and there are places all over the country where they're taking children out of their home and putting them in group homes or foster care because they're not affirming their children. There have been other instances of children being Baker acted, and that is a 72-hour psych hold.
Wow.
So especially when the parents desist or when the parents dissent.
Right.
So
And they're probably counting all of those as kids who are, oh, that's part of the whole homeless population. Oh, kids who are being thrown out of their homes. And, it was actually Vanessa Vokey had covered a retracted article that was on Psychology Today that actually talked about, says that the majority of LGBTQ kids today are actually more likely to reject their parents than the other way around. And a lot of the so-called homelessness is because of kids running away and just saying, well, we don't, and they're being affirmed by other parents that that's the right thing to do. You need to get away from those abusers. They don't understand your identity. You need to leave.
Right. And that was also a concern. Part of the program that I formulated for my daughter was to get her out of this cult. I also needed to remove her from the environment that she was in. In the event that she wanted to run away, I wanted to make sure that she had nowhere to run to,
Right.
and that there weren't people around her encouraging her to do this. I mean, and really, I mean, it was the trifecta of social media, peer pressure, and affirmation from the school. So getting all three of those things away from my daughter was paramount. And
Right.
any parent that is going through this, those are the first steps to pulling your children out of this cult.
Right. Wow. It's just crazy to me because it's like we send our kids to school to learn things that will, prepare them to function in the world, to be, workers, to be somebody that could be of value to an industry or to a company, or that can start their own company and contribute, but in terms of core values, family values, that's the realm of the parents and of the home. And it's like, we don't send our kids off for you to instill, who they should be. That's our job. It's like, how dare you?
Exactly. I mean, I do understand that in school there is some degree of morality that is discussed, but that is basically golden rule type stuff. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Right.
That kind of thing. Not actively teaching your children that your parents are your enemy.
Right.
That and also not disembodying the children into believing that there is something inherently wrong with them because of a feeling.
Right.
We used to talk about these things, as they pertain to puberty, as just kind of coming into your own, and discovering, this is a journey of self-discovery. And now they're twisting that into, you're not good, but you are. And in order to be your authentic self, you have to be somebody else.
Right.
And we teach, with my advocacy and my activism, I teach parents how to talk to their children about these things, and how to encourage the children to understanding their bodies, understanding the changes, and accepting them the way that they are.
Right.
And I didn't think that this was something that needed to be reintroduced into society, because this is something that people used to do a long time ago. But it was a lost art over the decades. Our generation didn't necessarily get to learn that.
Right.
And so, we're now realizing and looking back at history and looking at all of the ways that we've been captured throughout our society in the last few decades, to rejecting all of the societal norms all the way down to what is going on underneath your clothes.
Right.
So, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you the way you were born.
Well, and it's almost, and going back to kind of how they were trying to categorize your son as some sort of oppressor class, that needed to be, pointed out, and everybody needs to be made aware of this. How did we go from teaching kids that you can't tell somebody's story just by looking at them? Or, just because somebody has a certain skin color, or maybe has certain things, maybe the kid who seems like he has a nice house, you don't know that his parents fight every day or going through a divorce. Or, the kid who seems like they're a super overachiever, that's because, they have a brother who's chronically ill and they don't want to be a burden on the family. How did we go from teaching kids that you can't know somebody's story just based off of these superficial things, to saying you are these superficial things and this designates who you are in society? And I believe what's happening is we've made it now so that if you are this, so-called privileged class, it is the worst thing you can be. You're open game. It's fair game to attack you, to heckle you, to say the most degrading and vile things. You can't say anything back. So a lot of kids see that and they're like, oh God, that's me. Oh, I'm a cisgendered, heterosexual white person who came from the suburbs. That's hard. Well, I've got, let me come up with an identity so I can be something, because now, being some sort of oppressed anything is better than being that. So now they're coming up with these identities that are special and unique, and now that they can claim some sort of like victimhood.
And and I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the things that I've been having a really hard time trying to have crossover is the connection between CRT and SEL. So,
Wait, SEL.
as social emotional learning, critical race theory and social emotional learning.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that had been happening in one area was seemingly in opposition to the other for the longest time. So the people who are fighting these things are literally in opposition to one another.
Right.
And I have been trying to bridge that gap to let them both sides know it's the same thing, that it's happening to both of these groups, and you need to see the connection. So with stuff like critical race theory, things like Christian values and Western civilization, capitalism, those sort of things, those are the things that are under attack, right? And in SEL, it's the family unit, it's the family dynamic that is under attack. Well, in essence, they're both the same thing,
right?
Because you need, and so trying to explain the privilege oppression hierarchy to, say, a feminist has been a challenge. It's been a challenge, because we've been taught that this is the way we have to identify in order to garner support for women.
Right.
But in reality, what we're seeing is that we have to unify as a family unit, as a community, as a family, and accept that there are some real hard truths. Men are physically stronger than women.
Right.
There is a need for male role models in society.
Yes.
We need that. We also need the mother. We need those We need the nurturing
No,
and the support
and this
that a
is
mother
what I've
provides.
said too. It's like this whole attack on, listen, I genuinely understand that male violence is a problem in society. I've experienced it, I've seen it, and I've seen a lot of dysfunction, but a lot of that sort of dysfunction that I've seen is when those men have grown up without positive male role models, positive male mentorship. You see in other, cultures along across the world, as a young man or a boy enters puberty, he's taken under his wing by other, male mentors to teach him,
Right.
how to direct his natural strength, how to harness that, how to use it for good, how to, direct it in positive ways. A lot of these kids now are growing up without that. They just have lateral mentorship, which is just friends, and it's the blind
Right.
leading the blind.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, we can acknowledge that male violence is a problem, but then when we put men and men as a group, and men and even just masculinity, as that is the root of all evil, that's the problem. What happens is, then we cut all of that out. We allow this toxic, and I've talked about this before, this toxic femininity to take over with our men. You get people like Jeffrey Marsh and Dylan Mulvaney, who, that then it's like the right kind of man is this ultra feminine, sort of like just manipulative. Yeah, using femininity as a weapon. And we've got to realize it's not men themselves that's the problem. It's this misdirected, these qualities of men that can be a powerful thing, but they can also be a very dangerous thing when they're not properly sculpted and guided.
Right. But I say the same thing to the people who are in opposition to the indoctrination going on as it pertains to critical race theory. No, we do not accept the oppression privilege hierarchy, and not because some of the things that they talk about are wrong, but
Right.
because it is wrong to pit one group against another, because we're individuals, and an individual can have a hard life even though they were born into what we would consider privilege.
Right.
And someone who was born into a difficult situation can ascend to be a great to be a great person, right, and have a great life. Those things are intrinsic in what we used to believe was the American dream.
Right.
Now we're being taught that the American dream is a lie. Well, the American dream isn't a lie. They sold us a lie as to what the American dream should be. The American dream should be freedom,
Right.
not access.
Right.
So you when we talk about these things and when we think about these things in their entirety, we see how all of these small groups have been captured, and all of them individually have been fighting some of these things for decades. So, if you look at the CRT aspect, there are Christians who would say, we've been trying to warn you about this for years. Or there, if you're looking at the trans trendering,
Mm-hmm.
there will be lesbians
Mm-hmm.
who have been
Sounding the alarm.
yes, sounding the alarm for decades, because they were being told that taking testosterone was the way to be a better gay woman. You know what I
Right.
mean? Be a better lesbian. And so, all of these aspects of our society are all part of capture. And if I mean, the organization that Jennifer Fox founded, and I'm a co-founder of, um, Rev Fox USA.
Mm.
That, if you go to our website, you will see um, some information on what I call parallel language messaging. And part of the parallel language messaging that has made it possible to capture our entire society is stuff like statistics, using
Yes.
statistics to make a point. Well, any statistician
Oh, lying with statistics is one of the greatest art forms,
Right.
for social manipulation that has ever been established.
Yes, exactly. And so, we talk about statistics and statisticians, how they have manipulated and socially engineered us for decades. But there are other things too. Like you said, where do we go from this idea to now the opposite of that idea?
Right.
Well, there's another aspect of parallel language messaging, and that is glorifying licensure.
Yeah.
You glorifying and glorifying experts.
Yes.
So if you, I mean, and we've seen the terrible repercussions of this.
Yes.
People who go to college do barely enough to get a good grade,
Right.
and then
Who just know how to navigate these systems. They know how to, they know the basic format for how to put down whatever that'll get them to the next step, and they graduate these kids, and it's all just sort of this in grouping.
right. And so and then it also does something else. It says that you can't possibly be smart enough to know enough to advise or even live your own life the way that you deem necessary, because you're not qualified.
Right.
And we've been seeing this over the past couple of years with teachers unions, and education experts say
Right.
that parents can't possibly know what's right for their children
Yes.
because they're not an expert.
Yes.
Well, you're the only expert on your child.
Yes. Yes.
There is no more qualified person than you.
Yes.
So all of the degrees, all of the degrees can tell you about a particular course of study, but your child, you are the expert on that child. You
Right.
know everything about them. So we're that's part of parallel language messaging that I think society as a whole needs to understand, learn how to recognize it,
Yes.
learn how to speak against it, and learn how to inoculate
You know
yourself.
what's crazy? It's like, and what you're saying, how these are threads that it's not, all this stuff is not compartmentalized. And the reason why this stuff has been so successful, across political spectrum, across whether we're talking about the public sphere with race and these institutions, or the private sphere with children and gender ideology and sexual identification and the family structure. And what you're saying, and it's so true, is that there is just a formula that can be applied in so many ways. And once you start to recognize it and you can see it, you start to see it everywhere.
You see it everywhere.
And
And
that's why when people peak, they start peaking across like the board. You're like, whoa,
that's
there's
right.
so much of this going on.
That's right. And once and some people, and I've had, especially people from other countries who don't quite understand the way America works,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we talk about, okay, so I'll give you an example. This is a controversial topic, but gun control.
Mm.
So the gun lobbyists are they're very
Intense.
against all of these things about gun control.
Mm.
And they've been trying to tell us for decades, you take away the guns and you're in trouble, right?
Yes.
A lot of people were like, that's completely ludicrous. That could never happen.
Right.
But now, we're seeing how our government just not too long ago deemed all of us domestic terrorists if we
Right.
go to a school board meeting.
Right.
And a couple of them had been targeted. So
It's just amazing how powerful messaging is, and how
yes,
much, the media really sculpts things when we take these sensationalist stories. And when, they know that they don't need to really strong arm anything, because like you said, once they can indoctrinate you, once they can get you to think that you're the one who came up with the idea, that you're
yes,
the one who's thinking, oh, well, all these guns are causing such a problem. A lot of people don't realize that you've been led 90% of the way, all you had to do was just kind of take that one little step. And you're like, oh, geez, I came up with this myself. You know, this came out of nowhere. And then you don't realize all of the messaging, all of the sort of behind the scenes subliminal stuff that's guiding you towards these conclusions. It's by design.
And it is. And, you know, we when we think about, and if you've been properly peaked, and if you've reached that place, then you do start to see it everywhere. You go back and look at movies from, you know, years ago and think, why didn't I see this coming? I mean, you know, like you go back to some of the policies of the past, and you think, now I realize that was not a bad thing. We should have kept that thing, or, you know what I mean? Those types of things. We don't always see everything coming, but once you have been picked, and once you do see all of these little small tiny cuts, you realize that that we're in a culture war right now, and there's no need for any kinetic war, because the pen is truly mightier than the sword, and we have been cowed into compliance through policy, through culture,
and it's like what a lot of people are saying, that there's this soft war, even, you know, when you think of a cultural war with China, for example, who owns TikTok. You know, you could spend all this money on military equipment, you know, millions, billions, trillions of dollars, developing new technologies, warfare, or you could destabilize an entire culture by undermining its core principles and the most keystone component, which is the family. Right? Once you start to destabilize that, and you start to make, you know, reality relative and based on these sort of intangible things, that it's how you feel, how you see them. I mean, look, China would never. The way that they moderate TikTok and the principles that they claim to espouse on TikTok would never fly in China. China's not playing that shit at all.
Their children are not having these kinds of problems.
It's school. They're not sitting there talking about gender identity at school. They're drilling. Like, they're getting ready for, you know, a future of economic success. And that's the crazy part to me.
Well, you know, I mean, it's really ingenious when you think about how malevolently evil it is. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's powerful.
It's like what is the best way to destabilize a country? Make all of their young men essentially
impotent.
Essentially eunuchs. Make all of, I mean, and decrease their population and decrease their ability to protect themselves.
Right. Make all the families women-led, you know, remove the man from the household, make, you know, put all of the responsibility on the shoulders of the women, and tell them that that's empowerment. That's independence.
A lot of women, we do talk about this. You know, a long time ago, even in lesbian couples understood that they had a male role model around.
Right.
They always had, you know, a brother or a cousin or an uncle around as a good role model for that child, because even then they realized that having a positive male and a female in a child's life was essential to raising a well-rounded child.
Right. Well, now it's just a woman who identifies as a man because she wears pants and has a short haircut.
Right. I mean, that we understood that then, but somehow we've been made to believe that women are super women. They can do everything. Mm-hmm. They don't need a man. And all of our men are just caricatures of some goofball, you know, idiot who's bumbling around and doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right. You know, and now we've gotten them. They've gotten them all addicted to porn, so that they're no longer seeking healthy, sexual, mutualistic relationships with a living woman. You know, now everything is transhumanist. You have. You know, you don't need to have sex with a woman. You know, you can have masturbation fetishes in the comfort of your own home. You don't even have to take a shower. You don't have to function. You don't need a job. why spend all of this time trying to attract a real live woman when you could basically have, one on demand at a click of a button, all of these things. And like you were saying before, if we're going to dismantle certain pre-existing things in society, and not saying that there aren't things that, we don't have traditions that are toxic, that should be re-examined, that should be looked at, but we got to make sure, damn well sure, that we understand why that thing evolved the way that it did and why that structure evolved over the many hundreds and thousands of years before we take it fully apart.
Right. And I think that one of the things that I love about peaking people is when they come to the realization that we are animals. And
Yes.
despite all of your attempts to transcend human behavior, you're going to mess it up, because we are perfect in our design.
Right.
And there are some intrinsic details of our design that you are not going to be able to change.
Right.
I am a female. I am an adult human female. I am a woman.
Right.
That is not about my vagina.
Right.
Okay. That is, every cell in my body is female.
Right.
No matter how butch I get, or how loud I get, or how masculine I behave,
right,
how short my hair is, none of that is going to change the fact that every single cell in my body is female.
We go through our first puberty. We actually go through 3 puberties, and this is something that not a lot of people understand, but the first one is around 20 weeks in utero, where our bodies are actually exposed to more sex hormones than we will at our third puberty, during adolescence. And the point of this is for genital development, but also brain priming. Also just, our whole bodies, our skeletal as we form. So, from the point of conception, from the moment when you're either, inseminated with an X or a Y chromosome, that alters everything about the developmental path of that organism.
Right. So when we talk about that sort of thing as it pertains to transgenderism, right? There used to be this attitude, especially with mothers and their daughters, that you teach your daughter how to move through that puberty and make the connection of your brain and your body work for you.
Right.
And work and understanding what some of those things that are happening, and move through and get them to work for you, so that you understand your body, so that you can stay healthy.
Yes.
Right? Now we're telling our children that change in your body is violence.
Right.
And it should be medicated.
Right.
And in the most severe instance, it should be removed.
And that your body didn't ask your consent before it decided to do these things to you.
Right. And that's creating a lot of, that is creating a TikTok to OnlyFans pipeline.
Yeah.
It's creating severe depression,
isolation.
Yes. It's creating a society of delusional, sex addicted misanthropes. We don't need that.
No.
We have enough of the negative sexual addictions and sexual behaviors and relationship issues between men and women. And we don't need this as well.
Right.
It's not helpful for society, and quite frankly, it's detrimental to the individual on the most basic level of accepting who you are in your own body.
Right.
Sans modifications.
Well, that's why when you're online, and when we have now moved all of our socialization from the world, onto the internet now, where, even for a short time during COVID, and that hasn't totally left us, that we've still continued at least some of those structures. we're learning online, we're, you know, interacting online, we're developing these avatars of ourself online. And that stuff, you can be anybody that you want to be. You can create any representation, any reflection of yourself, but that doesn't translate to the real world.
Right.
And when, from the time that these little kids, I mean, these kids are so capable from the time that they were young, you know, on devices, online, interacting in this way, not interacting with the real world. And it creates a blurring of the line between reality and sort of virtual reality. And it's scary to me, you know, again, like what this end game is. And that's why even with this transhumanistic stuff, all this stuff is possible when you're living online, when you're doing the vast majority of your socializing online, and then you're trying to alter reality to fit that, and it doesn't work.
And that's why Jennifer Thomas developed the plan for the speakers corners, right? Because there's limitations. There's limitations to doing everything virtual. You don't get to humanize someone virtually, right? You don't get to see them. You don't get to smell them. You don't get to touch them. You know, there are things about an individual person that if you see them, even if you see them in person, say on your television, there is a firm affirmation that person exists in real life, number one, right? And number two, that whatever they say or do is not going to be moderated. If you're standing right in front of someone at a speaker's corner, everything that they say is real, and it's coming right out of their mouth, and it has to go right in your ear holes, and you have to deal with that. And they have to deal with that. So that's the reason for the speaker's corner. And I think Jennifer Thomas was ingenious in creating this idea that we should go out and use our free speech.
Yes.
Say the things that we can't say. I mean, and the speakers corners, of course, were comprised, by Brits, right? And Posey Parker brought it back. Posey Parker brought it back. But as far as the American speakers corners go, there is a slight difference in that, we're taking to the streets to say whatever we want to as free Americans, to be able to make it understood that your virtual self is not a thing.
Hold on for a second. Hey, yo, Yvette, get the fuck off of my stream with that shit, all right? Like, if you want to talk to me, you have my number. Stop with the bullshit, all right? I'm fucking having a conversation, and I see you in the side, or I'm going to block you for a little bit. I'm not fucking playing with you right now, okay? It's disrespectful as shit, yo. And you know what you're doing. That shit's corny, yo. I'm fucking blocking you for... Sorry. That's why I'm just... Like, I've been real cool about not blocking you for a while, but you see me, I'm having a conversation with this woman, and you're being disrespectful as fuck. Knock it off. Sorry, go ahead.
I see your streams. I've seen your streams a couple of times. And, I think it's interesting that you engage with. I know, the one thing I will say that I love about my community, I don't have like a massive following, but I feel like I really know my people. I like, and I'm like, all I know is this little tiny like circle and your guys' names, but like I know people's like personalities. I remember their little like stories and stuff they've told. Like I kind of love. So it's just funny. Sorry about that. I do a lot of these, but I never get to see what's in the chat because I'm usually on my screen. It's on your screen.
You can't see it. Yeah, but when you look at back, you'll be able to see. I try to keep it on the screen so that people can see it. And then also, in case my channel ever gets deleted, I have everything backed up to Odyssey, so that way the chat is like on the video, so it doesn't get lost. Because I mean, this channel is like not just my channel. I didn't create this by myself. It's all of the people who comment. It's the people who have contributed. It's women like you who come on and share new, you know what I mean? So I just feel like I like having everybody's input. But Yvette, we can talk about this later. I'm just not gonna stop.
Well, and those are the kinds of things. See, if we were at a speaker's corner, Yvette can challenge my ideas.
Yeah, no, she's on our side. She's just mad at me about something, but it's like, we'll talk about it. Like, stop it. I'm having a conversation, okay? We'll do this later.
That's funny. She's trying to, hey, look, that's a mistake.
No, but like, seriously, I love, you know what really like gave me the chills too, Gabs, when I was getting ready for this conversation, and I always do this before I interview anybody, I really try to like do my homework and like see everything that they've done, like read up on them. And I was watching footage of you speaking at the school board, I guess in Nevada, on behalf of your son. And it gave me chills because it's like, even as much as I, say, oh, I don't care what anybody thinks or I'll do, there is a part of me that like, and I've been planning to go to a school board meeting. And I think that's one of the things that I feel like of everything that I'll have to do that I'm going to really have to like amp myself up for and really like just do everything I can to keep my courage, because it's hard when it's your community. It's one thing to go to, in a Philly with people that I don't know or go and talk. But when it's like I'm surrounded by community members that I know are my neighbors, that are teachers that I know, I'm involved, I'm on the PTO. So it's like, I know all these people. And just to see you with so much of, you were like, I'll sue you. If you don't, yeah. You're like, and not only will I sue you, I'll go and get everybody else fired up so that they'll sue the fuck out of you too. Like, if that's really how you guys want to do it, we'll do it like that. And
I encourage, I encourage. Pull their draws off. Listen, let me tell you something. Okay, so this is an aspect of capture that I did not realize was really happening until I started my lawsuit.
Right.
So, in our society, we're taught that filing a lawsuit is cowardly. That
Bullshit.
It's money hungry.
They want you to think that. They want you to think that so you won't do it.
Right. So we were all taught that, and I'm a conservative. Mm-hmm. So as a conservative, you don't sue. Mm-hmm. You don't sue unless that's a rich people thing mm-hmm. to do anyway, because you can't afford lawyers. Right. So all of that stuff, all of the lawsuit stuff, when I would try to encourage people to sue, they would be like, oh, is that the only thing I can do? And yes.
Yo, you know what's crazy? And not to cut the really quick, like my boyfriend, he's like a hood dude, right? He's like a recovering hood person. He's like, but he was saying he was in this sort of like group, and he was saying, someone was like, all right, what happens if something bad happens? He goes, I'm calling the police. And everyone's like, nah, yo, we don't get down. We're not doing that. He goes, no, I'm done. I'm done getting in trouble. I'm done, sticking to the code and, sticking to the streets, and we're going to do. And then I ended up getting in trouble, and it ends up taking more years away from my children, my life. I'm done. I'm calling the cops. Anybody wants to come fuck with me, yo, I'm not throwing hands. I'm not fucking getting involved with anybody. I'm calling the police. I'm going to be like the next white person, and I'm going to sit on the porch and be like, it was him right over there, officer. Like,
Because we've been conditioned to believe these things that are counterproductive to our situation and counterproductive to our progress.
Right.
So, I mean, and that is, that's been true for lawsuits. But what's so funny about that is that when I filed my lawsuit 3 months later, we got relief.
Right.
My son.
There you go.
So, and when I started to pique people and I started to make them understand, look, they told us that lawsuits were wrong so that we wouldn't file lawsuits when they messed up. Okay.
Right. And they're
stop
more
believing
accessible than people realize. You were sitting there saying how, you guys were in a very dire financial situation and you still were able to file a lawsuit. People think that you need to have all this money. They don't understand that once you get, once you, that's how your lawyer gets paid is, and that's why he's going to fight for it, because he wants to get paid. He's not getting paid up front. If you have a good case and you can you can get him fired up about your case and feel like there's really something there, that's why he's going to fight, because he's trying to get his money. He's not coming up front.
Well, I got to tell you, here's the good news. So, because our first lawyer was not free.
Oh, God.
But he didn't require that we pay him right up front.
Gotcha.
But because it was a groundbreaking lawsuit, and because, and it's still ongoing, I still owe quite a lot of money. I still owe quite a lot of money.
I gotta do the GoFundMe.
I do have a Give, Send, Go, Give, Send, Go.
That'll all be in the description, folks.
Yes, thank you. But because I did that, and people realized how serious this is, and how our constitutional rights are being violated.
Yes.
Because I did that, now there are a dozen public interest law firms who will take your case based on one survey.
Good.
So
you're setting a precedent, and they're realizing that this has traction, and that's
right.
You're really paving the way for other parents.
This into an ambulance chasing business.
Hell, you goddamn right.
I encourage every parent. And listen,
in every city.
Yes.
Activate yourself.
You can take that $100,000 that they're going to offer you in the first month.
Yeah.
Or that $50,000 or whatever it is.
Right.
You don't have to do anything. But I will tell you, it's not just about the money, okay? And I'll give you an example. Rebecca Euling. She's in Pasco County, Florida. I talked to Rebecca. She did everything right. She kept hold of all of the emails. She questioned. She did all of that stuff.
Right.
And then her daughter was retaliated against and expelled from her school
because
her mother asked questions. Literally, that's why. So, because her mother asks questions, the daughter was expelled from the school and sent to a school across town. No bus. Okay.
No, that's not right.
And the daughter experienced severe trauma from that.
Of course.
Yes, she was uprooted from
her friends, her life, and she feels like she's a criminal. Her mom's a criminal. Right. Now, like the whole town is looking at them. Right. Of course.
And so months went by, and I kept telling Rebecca, "You gotta sue, honey.
You have to.
You have to sue." So I found her a lawyer. She finally decided to sue.
Right.
She filed her lawyer filed that lawsuit one day. A week later, the judge ruled that her daughter could go back to her school.
Thank you.
There would be no more retaliation. Now, that gave Rebecca her power back as a parent.
Yes.
And it gave her daughter's life back.
Yes. Like you said. Well, like you were saying, I've said this a million times, and this is why I fuck with you so heavy. Like it really, because at the end of the day, you say, you're conservative woman, a Texan woman, a black mother, a biracial woman, fuck all these identities. You're a mother. And at the end of the day, one thing that we all share, and that we share with our grandmothers, we share with other mothers across time, across culture, is that this instinctual warning system, sense of danger and threat to our children. And we've got to stop letting them deactivate that in us.
Right.
We have so much more power.
They lied to you. They used parallel language messaging to disarm you. But all of your internal warning systems are telling you that your children are in danger. You see your child in distress, and you know that this is not right. It's the same thing that's happened with gender ideology. All of these parents, like Chloe Cole, I feel so terrible for her parents, because her parents are getting blamed for this, when all that they really did was believe somebody who was telling them that this was the right thing to do for their
Now,
child.
who's Chloe Cole? Is that a detransitioner or?
Transition. She's a detransitioner. She's 18 years old. She just had her 18th birthday not too long ago. She did the entire thing. The only thing that she didn't do was get the
The
do the arm
phalloplasty,
thing, and
the arm roll up, the fruit roll up.
right, the yeah, the baloney
And we have
roll.
to laugh because it's so horrifying.
Yeah, she didn't do that, but she's only 18. Who knows what she would have done later on? But she had all of her breast tissue removed.
Oh God.
She got the hormones. She get, she'll never, who knows if she'll be able to even have a baby, but even if she does, even if she is lucky enough to make it to motherhood, she will have no way to feed that child.
It's something that Exelanzic had said, who was, I don't know if you know who she is. She was another YouTuber who really focused on the sort of medical aspects and the long-term health aspects of medicalizing. And she said, if a drug, testosterone, which any drug outside of its, therapeutic range is a poison. Okay, so
Right.
anything that you take outside of a therapeutic range becomes a poison. And that's anything. That's caffeine,
Right.
that's sugar, anything. She said with testosterone, if you are as a woman, and this is an exogenous hormone, this is a hormone that your body is not built to receive and is not built to make. If you're taking enough testosterone to have dramatic, observable effects like a deeper voice or facial
Right.
hair, there are things happening inside your body that you can't see that are dramatic.
Right.
Things with your ligaments, things with your connective tissues, because
Right.
testosterone doesn't just impact these superficial things. It's impacting your organs, the way your body. You can't take one piece out of such an intricately designed organism as the human body and not expect that everything is going to be impacted.
That's right. I mean, and we're already seeing some of the effects of puberty blockers and wrong sex hormones
Right.
with things like osteoporosis. And even people who have to take some sort of hormone replacement, even at young ages for things like precocious puberty, they still have symptoms. They still have side effects.
Like me, I'm on
Things.
exogenous hormone. I was diagnosed with cancer, in 2021. I had to radiate I did a trans ovarian, surgery where they tried to move my ovaries up into my abdominal cavity to try to get it out of the field of radiation,
Right.
hoping that, it would reduce its exposure and lower the chance that I would go into menopause. It failed. So I went into menopause, immediate iatrogenic menopause versus the normal physiologic menopause that happens over 7 years. I'm
Right.
now taking, I take patches. Every 3 days I have to change a patch that goes on my skin. And I can tell you, it is not the same as my body making those hormones. I feel the
Right.
differences. It impacts everything. People think,
Right.
oh, they have them, then you just take more. No, our body cannot receive these synthetic or externalized hormones in the same way than as if we had made it ourselves.
Right. And there's all kinds of other things that go along with being a woman besides just your breast or
Right.
your soft skin. I mean, you know, all of the internal things that happen on a cellular level
Right.
are so are damaged and even ruined to the point of not being able to return.
They're doing this to kids.
Right.
They're starting their life
Kids
this
are
way.
not allowed to get a tattoo,
Jesus Christ.
are not allowed to get a tattoo, or 18-year-olds who can join the but they can't get a drink. We're now telling those kids, hey, look, why don't you cut your tits off? It'll make you happy.
So what happened with your daughter? So what tipped you off that stuff was going on with her? Was it just that you saw that she was presenting differently? What kind of happened there? And then what, did she push back on you at all? Did you have difficulty kind of getting that under
Well,
control?
this is I mean, and this is what people don't understand about social transition. social transitioning all by itself is traumatic.
Yes.
So my daughter was having, first of all, she was engaging on social media with no less than 5,000
Oh, God.
other other kids and AGPs telling her how to hide things from me,
Jesus Christ.
what to say to teachers and staff at school, ways to self-harm without me finding out, how to manipulate me into compliance. I mean, all of these things that I didn't know those things I did not know were going on for months before I really, really understood and took charge of the situation.
Right.
When it started, it was just, oh, I'm non-binary, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's just what the kids, you know.
bad, you know. But I will tell you, and I say this all the time, that is the point at which you need to act.
Right.
And so when my child was identifying as non-binary, I didn't think anything of it. But as time went on, she started turning into a monster.
Right.
Now, this is a child that when she would hug you, she would hug you with her whole body and squeeze you so
Oh.
tight and shut her eyes and she was
Oh.
that kind of loving person. And she turned into the most cruel kid. I've got 5 kids,
Right.
and she's my only daughter. I
They
had never seen a child be that cruel to
they
other
teach
kids.
kids that the parents are really the enemy. Your
Right.
parent doesn't get it. Yeah, oh, I'm so sorry. The true affirming. And of course, you have a whole legion of these parents on TikTok demonstrating how if you were my child and you came out to me, this is what I do because I understand that trans care is life saving. And they literally convince your kid that if people aren't affirming this, that they're basically wishing death upon you.
That's another aspect of parallel language messaging we call the false dichotomy.
Yeah.
So the false dichotomy is, if you don't do this, your kid's going to kill themselves.
Right.
And that's a lie.
Right.
That's a lie. So all of those things, and yes, it does make your children, if you're not immediately in support of and affirming.
Right.
So what happened was my daughter says, well, she says she's trans. I'm not going to get top surgery right away. I'm like, you're not going to get top surgery at
Oh,
all.
God. How old was she when this first kind of started?
She was, at that time, I think it was 13.
See, I have an 11-year-old. Like, this is what I'm talking about. And it's like, I'm interested in all this for the channel, of course, and for all you guys. But I'm also as a mother. I'm like, I need to know because
When I'm interviewed by women, as soon as the camera shuts off, they're like, can I see that website?
yeah, like, hey, that's how I feel. I'm like, my God, because even though I'm educating myself, I just feel like these forces at play are so sophisticated and because they've somehow been able to evade alarm for such a long time. They've gotten able to get more and more sophisticated before we even, now, by the time we finally realize, hey, this is going on, it's been operating now for a long time.
Right.
And functioning.
And there's a lot, they're very well funded and they are very sophisticated. It took me months. And mind you, I was teaching other parents about indoctrination while my own child was being indoctrinated.
Isn't it scary?
It can happen to anyone.
Jesus Christ.
And when it was happening to my daughter, in the beginning, there was an elation and fine, and she was all happy until I told her that I wouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the snark started coming in, which at the time I was like, this is just 13.
Right.
She's going through 13. It's going to be terrible.
She's going through a bad case of the 13,
Right. It's going to be terrible. But then we visited a family member who didn't have social media. Who didn't have internet.
Right.
So my daughter didn't have social media and she wasn't around her friends and she wasn't at school.
Mm-hmm.
And she went back to the loving, caring, sweet.
Yes. Yes.
What the hell is this?
It's
What's going on? when she went, we were away for a month during the summer, last summer. And when we went back, she reverted right back to the crazy.
That's
And then it
crazy.
got worse and worse. And finally, there was, the cutting and the scratching and the biting. And she
Wow.
now she has night terrors, and she has she's hearing voices and all of this stuff that weren't happening.
Kids are manifesting a lot again, and part of it is this idea. So much of it is, I think, rooted in us, the sort of transhumanism of living through the internet and socializing through an internet, and it's through an avatar. Because when we're interacting with somebody, even you and me right now, I'm interacting with an avatar of you. You're
Right,
not, I've interacted with you flesh and blood in front of me. But right now we're interacting through, I'm really looking at my computer. I'm yelling at my computer right now. I'm just sitting alone in a room talking to my computer, but later I'm going to say, I had just had a great afternoon with, my girlfriend Gabs, and we talked,
right,
but really I wasn't. I sat in a room by myself and talked at my
right,
computer for 3 hours.
right,
And it feels so real, and it feels so, and there is other people on the other side. But it really does. It distorts our sense of reality,
right,
and this idea that you need to stand out amongst the sea of people, and you need to be
right,
the most shocking and have the most bizarre, and we want to highlight all of the weird. People
right.
really are like the multiple personality disorders. People,
Yeah,
it's like however mentally ill you can be,
right.
you've
And
won.
that's another thing that's being that's being weaponized. Medical issues,
Yes.
mental health issues. Those are being weaponized so that you can't attack a person who's
Right.
got you know. And so, when my daughter, when she was telling me that she had night terrors, I was just like,
That's so me. I'm like, all right.
I'm just like,
I'm so bad sometimes. I'm like,
you
huh?
sleep for 12 hours a night,
Yeah.
and we sleep in the same room, and you snore, honey. You're not having, if anybody, if you wouldn't have to tell me you were having night terrors if you truly were having night terrors, because I would hear that shit in the night. You know what I mean? Like, I would know that already. I'm your mother.
And then people are going to
No,
tell her that, oh, well, your mom is denying your
right,
truth. Well,
right.
yeah.
But there was, I mean, so when those kinds of things started, and this whole thing started, and showering with the light off, and I mean, just all of this nonsense because of her because of her gender dysphoria and all of
Right.
this. And I'm just like, you have gender dysphoria.
Yeah. Like,
Okay. um so I mean, it was just the absurdity of it. And I did, I mean, when if you look at the webinar, and I encourage everyone to look at the webinar, because it really does go through step by step all of the phases and steps of this process. But when that stuff was going on, I had no idea of how to handle that.
mm,
And it wasn't, and I just kind of chalked it up to teenage nonsense
right.
phases, whatever. And then when I went to my daughter's school, and an administrator at the school called her by a boy's name,
Oh, whew.
I was just like,
Yeah. No.
no, I
No.
can't. My daughter is in danger.
Right.
I'm gonna
Thank
get her.
God. God bless you, yo. I just, it scares me how much parents and mothers in particular, and men and fathers, have just been trained out of their. I say it over and over. I'm like trying to look for another, but it's trained out of their internal alarm. Their
Yeah,
sense of, I know my child. I
right,
gave birth to this child. I carried this child through my body. When I was born with this child in my ovaries, I've been with this
right,
child since I was a fetus. I
right.
developed this child in my body before I was even
Born,
born,
right.
you
This
know?
child came from me before I was me. Like,
Yes.
that is, and it's like, there's all of these. And as a mother, I had to come to grips with some things. Okay, number one, this is my fault because I'm not paying attention. And I think that that is hard for parents to really kind of take a hold of and grasp,
Mm-hmm.
because but I mean, that doesn't mean that you're a bad parent. That means that you're just a parent who has a life, who's
Yes.
busy, and life is taking hold.
And take back control now. Recognize that it happened. Don't worry about beating yourself up.
That's right.
Because a lot of us, and real quick, TPS, thank you so much. She just donated $5. She said, I say this with all sincerity and deep belief that critical theory is the privation, the twisting of God's creation into its seductive opposite. Yo, I read some really interesting things, even just from like a biblical perspective. And I'm not, I have like a little bit of like a Christian background. My parents weren't super religious or anything like that, but I went to a Episcopalian school and we had to do religion 3 days a week. So I like read the whole Bible, more from even like a, from like an intellectual aspect. I've learned about whatever. And it's really interesting hearing this like one biblical perspective I heard about gender ideology and talking about how everything now is like an inversion of itself. And how when we invert things, and it's, I gotta find it. It was really interesting, but yeah.
It's the same for so okay, all critical theories. Now that goes along with critical race theory or gender ideology. All of those things are flipped on their head of what we know to be true.
Right.
What we know to be the way.
Right.
What we know to be the path to saying kosher or whatever it is,
Right.
in that, what the meditators say. Anyway, but those are the things that to a kind of content stasis, right? So
Right.
so all of these things, being happy with one's self,
Right.
the critical theories flip them on their head and say you can only be happy with yourself if you have a self-deprecating attitude,
Right.
and behavior towards your body, because you need to humble yourself.
Right. And that you're your own God. You're your own center of the universe. That, rather than, we are, we are the image of God. We were made in the image of God. It's, we make the world in the image of us.
Right.
There's no reality. There's nothing tangible. Nothing is tangible, or there's no common truth or natural law that we can compare our experience of the world against. It's, and that's part of like dismantling, everything you thought you knew was true isn't true. And that makes everybody unlearn, relearn, re-educate yourself.
Right. And we don't need to unlearn. Excuse me, even in science, the whole basis of science is building upon what we already knew, dispelling the things that were wrong and building upon
and
it,
proving
right?
that it was wrong, not just saying, it was wrong because, someone felt that way.
And the Socratic method and all of those things that we know as the way, right? And it's all being told to us that it's somehow wrong and bad, when in all actuality, yes, there are aspects of everything that are wrong and bad, but by and large, the way that we have progressed as a society is in its natural progression is the way it's supposed to go. Right. Good, bad, and ugly.
Right.
And the social engineering that has taken place is unnatural. Therefore, it is not getting the desired result, because it's going against our natures. It's going against our natural progression.
Right. And what I think is so crazy too, when you really look at this as like a first world thing. And, we're talking about how horrible it is and everybody's so oppressed and there's so many, so much violence happening. And it's crazy because it's like, then how do you, if everything is so horrible, you've been so oppressed, how do you have so much luxury to sit and to theorize about, your identity and your feelings and who you could be and explore all these things, for us to have gotten here, and I said this in my first Speaker's Corner thing, for us to even exist, first of all, as organisms and as a species, and even as an individual organism within a species, every single ancestor on both your mother and your father's side had to survive, at least towards reproduction. I mean, they had to survive, a natural abortion. Our bodies sometimes abort pregnancies for whatever reason. They had to survive childhood illnesses, famine, drought, war, plague. I mean, so you're pretty fucking well designed.
Right.
If your body wasn't well designed, that lineage would have ended a long time ago. I mean, you are the culmination of success.
Right.
And
really, and you know what? And I mean, like, and when I talk to the, sometimes when I have discussions with these people who talk about how privileged we are, but also simultaneously how oppressed, particular individuals are or whatever. Right. And then I'm like, you know what? Let's go drop your ass in Fallujah, bitch, and let's see how you fare.
I really think everyone should have to live.
Right. Let's see could you survive?
No.
Could you make it out?
No. And I think that's why I find it so ridiculous, because I lived in Peru. I was working at a high volume birth center in Taytay Rizal, which is 40 minutes outside of Manila in the Philippines. And when I talk about abject poverty, I'm talking about living along a filthy river full of trash, toxins, human waste, kids, walking around with no barefoot. No kids have diapers. The houses are literally, pieces of sheet metal sort of tinned together, and we're having to work with, just very low tech, high quality, birth center stuff. And we're delivering baby. I mean, some of these women, again, who don't have access to birth control, having baby after baby on their 13th baby. I mean, she's got uterine prolapse. She's walking to every single appointment, because if they attend every single prenatal appointment, they can get a free birth. They're walking however many fucking miles it is to get there and get that. That's amazing. And I think that that's why I want my children. I told my kids, I said, once you're in high school, once you're in college, you guys are going out in this world. My kids are Dominican. You can go live with your abuelita in Santo Domingo. Like, you need to see
the rest of the world. And I think that those of us who have traveled to the rest of the world, I really was very, very spoiled and entitled until I went to other places in the world. And I didn't even go to any third world places. I just went to other places. And even compared to first world countries, we still have it very, very good.
Yes.
Even compared to some other places. I'm from Texas, where there's no such thing as a small apartment. Okay. Right. There's that doesn't exist. If you go to other places in other countries, literally there may be enough room for a bed, and there's no bathroom. It's down the hall.
I lived in the Amazon for a little while, and we lived in this one little hotel, and it was me and my girlfriend were thugging it, and our parents said that we couldn't go to the Amazon, and we really wanted to, so we kind of lied. So we couldn't call anybody and ask for extra money. We had a little ghetto budget, and we were like, all right, we're going to do this. We went on like a lancha, and they were delivering cattle along the Amazon. We were trying to get to Iquitos. It took us about 2 weeks to get there. And we were like, we really, really, just in case, got to budget this out. We stayed in this little tiny, it was like a hostel. And the woman who owned it was renting rooms. And she was renting room, our neighbor next door, it was a mother. She was living in this probably about the size of this room that I'm in right now, maybe even a little bit smaller. It was enough room for a bed, a little like cabinet that had a TV on it, and they all basically lived on the bed, her and her kids. And there was rats coming in, there was water on the floor. The place was like, and they survive, and you survive. And I just really believe, and I've said this before, they say that, strong men make hard times make strong men. Strong men make good times make weak men make hard times.
Yes. It's and that really is, I mean, there's all kinds of instances and sayings and colloquialisms that we use to describe, how the life cycle works when there is success at the height of a family, or even at the height of society. I mean, I equivocate this sort of thing to, the height of the Roman
Yes.
society. Um, and we're at the pinnacle, right? So at the pinnacle of Roman society, there was all kinds of sexual debauchery,
Yeah.
and eunuchs, and all of this sexual, or exploration, and then syphilis, and then they all died, and you know what I mean. It's all of that sort of thing. So now, we're at the pinnacle of society. Everybody, there's the richest of the rich that have 10 times more, 15, 20 times more than they could ever use in a lifetime.
Right.
And then there are people who are just completely and totally destitute.
Right.
In Mississippi, they didn't even have water.
Right. Right.
So though all of those things are happening in real time right now, and too many people are not seeing it as a problem. And I'd say this to conservatives all the time, because conservatives, one of the things that has been hard for me to get them to understand is that we can't look at things on a personal responsibility basis anymore, because this is so pervasive in society. It could literally end our ability to procreate.
Right.
I
mean, we already have, our fertility rates are already in nosedive.
That's an existential crisis. I mean, there's half of the children in any given school anywhere in America are identifying as LGBT.
Yeah.
And so what happens when 10%, let's say 10% of those decide to sterilize themselves?
Right.
How is our society going to perpetuate itself? How are people going to be able to perpetuate themselves?
Not only that, but accommodate these people who are going to have lifelong health needs. You have young women in menopause starting at the age of 19, 20, 21. Me going in menopause at 33, and I talked about this at the Pittsburgh Speakers Corner. I know that my risk of dementia now is exponentially higher, and I'm going to have to keep an eye on that for the rest of my life. And that I have a limited amount of time. They think that they can be on exogenous hormones for the rest of your life. Let's pretend that externalized estrogen function in the way that physiological estrogen did, which we know it absolutely does not. It only remedies a few superficial things. Let's just pretend that it did. You can only be on it for about 10 years before it becomes cancerous.
Right.
I mean,
yes. The lifelong debilitating diseases and psychological problems, medical treatments, all of those things that these kids who have already done this are going to need.
They're going to age, and we're not going to understand a lot of and again, there's no protocol or standardization for how these procedures are being laid out. It's just, they're making a lot of this shit up as you go. And if you really look, and I've reviewed so many videos of people who have had these procedures and these, sex reassignment, basically a sex approximation. It's a plastic surgery to approximate the appearance of the opposite sex genitals. A lot of this stuff is totally just bizarre. They're trying to make this stuff up. We're going to have caretakers who aren't going to understand how to help these people, how to work around, these problems that are sure to happen. And then these people aren't going to have families, because again, they never either had children or whatever it is. And it's going to become a public problem.
It's going to be a public health crisis.
Absolutely.
We're going to have parents who are having to take care of their 40-year-old children who are essentially invalids because of the choices that their parents allowed them to make when they were teenagers. And this is, and it's not, and I some of the parents that you see on TikTok, that's a small portion of the reality of the detransitioners and the people who are currently trying to transition. A lot of these parents are lied to, they're manipulated, they
Yes.
are threatened.
Threatened.
They're threatened, so they go along with this in an attempt to cope and
Right.
to not lose their children.
Right.
They're, I mean, a lot of the times they're told that their kids are going to kill themselves if they don't. Wouldn't you do anything to make sure that your kid didn't kill themselves? So this is, and so all of these parents, all of these parents' decisions to allow their children to transition, and even the adults who have transitioned and now are regretting it. Scott Werner, is that his name? And
Um.
is that her name?
Fuck. What is it? Scott.
Oh,
Scott. No. Fuck.
I can't remember.
Well, there goes my monetization. I gotta stop
Right.
cursing.
and other people like here in Texas, there's Abel Garcia.
Yeah.
Abel Garcia, he is a very sweet man.
Mm-hmm.
He's 25 years old. He's young. He's younger than some of my children are now.
And
And at one time he had breasts.
right.
He took all of these hormones for about 2 years, and now his genitals have atrophied to the point that
Oh.
he can no longer have proper urination. I mean, those are the kinds of
Oh,
things.
Abel. I love
Yeah,
him. He was actually the first person I ever interviewed on this channel. And it's funny because you look at cases like Abel Garcia and you think, oh, well, he didn't have genital surgery, or oh, some people were just, on cross-sex hormones for a little while, or oh, top surgery. What people don't understand too, it's like you said, there's a psychological component. Forget all of the physical side effects, which we could go over. I mean, when you damage the sort of lymph nodes by cutting out that tissue, I mean, he said have tissue, across your chest, how that's
right.
going to impact your body's ability to drain, fluids and
Mhm.
toxins.
Right.
But also, like, the psychological thing, I could tell just by talking to him. I know that there was a lot of confusion about, well, what's my sexuality, or what does this mean for me as a
Right.
man? And, I know that I'm a man and I want to reclaim that, but am I fully a man? And I could tell he was going through this sort of like heartbreaking process of, I went through this. What does that mean for me? It's just, it messes with you.
It does. And like my daughter was socially transitioned. And I still break down she has a when she has a normal female experience, because I was so terrified,
Mm,
and and there were times where I was ready to concede,
right.
and I was ready to say, you know what?
Of course, because it's like, it's hard after a while. It starts to, you hear oh, well, this is what, all of the available evidence is
What it
saying.
is, and this is what,
And then
and
you're
then
like, am I wrong? Am I
right,
wrong?
that's right. And I mean, it takes a toll, and it takes hold of everyone involved.
Yes.
And so even with that, I mean, like my daughter, we were at Walgreens, and my daughter, she's so boss, right? So she's walking
She's
into
your
this,
daughter, so I can imagine.
it's my child, so right.
Right.
But she's walking into this store, and she's walking into this Walgreens, and she's walking in like a boss, and I'm kind of snickering in the background. And she walks right into the stuffed animals, and there's this stuffed animal octopus hat. And she takes it and she shoves it down on her head. And then she turns around, and I'm like, do you have to have all the stuffed animals, Pete? All of them?
Oh, yes.
And she says, what do you expect? You had a girl.
Hmm.
And
I know. Doesn't it feel good?
yes, because it was just like, this child, even subconsciously, was struggling with those things, and now she was
Oh,
not,
God. Good for
and
her,
so
and the resilience.
right. And so I was just, and of course I had to buy that $15
Yeah, I
something.
know that's right. All right, throw it on the thing. Let's go.
I mean, those kinds of milestones, and I say milestones because I feel like there's a process, And once you get to a certain place, that's when you know that your child is fully embodied in their masculinity or their femininity again.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where they had been prior to the capture. And you've successfully recaptured your child if they hit this milestone.
Right.
So I do feel like my daughter is fully
Thank God.
Embodied into her femininity.
Thank God.
Even though she is still very much a tomboy.
Well, exactly. Femininity, femininity is just being a woman and owning your womanhood and being proud of that, and that's true femininity,
Right. I mean, when she's very much a tomboy, and I feel like we should. I was a tomboy, and I relish in the opportunity to raise a tomboy.
Yes.
I love it. There are things that are presented on a daily basis that I can relate to because I remember being like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the other day I went to wake her up and there was a fucking toolbox in her bed. I'm like, what are you sleeping with?
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
What's happening right now? There's this ratchet set in her bed, and I'm just like, what did you need to fix something in your dreams? I mean, what are you talking about? And she said, I was fixing something and I fell asleep. But that is,
and you can do that as a woman, as a young woman, as a girl. That's the best part. Realizing you can do these things, you can like these things, you can be these things as a girl.
Right. And it didn't, and I was so excited to see that, and her act like it wasn't a weird thing. It's not a weird, it's a perfectly normal thing to happen, to fall asleep with a toolbox in your bed as a 14-year-old girl.
I love it.
I think that is magnificent. I think she's magical, and she's not trapped in the wrong body.
No.
She's not a boy in the wrong body. She is fully embodied in her femininity, and she is a badass girl.
God bless her. God bless you.
That is.
And it just, since we're like far enough into the stream, I'll tuck that. I haven't talked about this on the stream, but I'll just tuck this in really quick. There was, many years ago now, and it was for a relatively short time. I was addicted to opiates. And, and thank God, I mean, I've seen how it's devastated people's lives, and I've seen, a lot of people have been able to get out of that, and thank God I had a good support system, I was able to get through that, and have been clean for many years. But at that time, as a young adult, I didn't want to experience pain at all. I didn't want to go through hard things. I just didn't want to feel it. I was afraid. I didn't want to, if I ever had to have some sort of medical procedure, I would be so nervous. Are they going to give me something? Or is it going to be, are you going to do anything for this, Right. And part of like reclaiming myself was when I gave birth at home. I had home births that were unmedicated. And I said, I spent so much time not feeling anything. And I was so desperate to not feel pain and to not go through anything that was uncomfortable and that would be difficult, that I actually wrought so much pain onto my life.
Right.
Because I realized I wasn't erasing pain. I was pushing it off, pushing it further, and I was taking a rain check for it, but I had to cash that at some point.
Right.
And when I did, it was
That's what they say, shortcuts make long delays.
Exactly right.
That's right.
And so when it was finally, and I was able to feel again, and you go through this time when you're in recovery where everything all of a sudden, it's like you're experiencing the world in high definition.
Right.
Everything, I mean, when someone touches your skin, you feel it. Everything is almost more vivid. You feel your emotions. So I used to cry listening to music because it's like, oh my God, I can like hear it, like really feel it.
Right.
And
opioids really do take away
it dulls everything.
It dulls everything. You can't love enough.
No.
You can't hear enough. You can't feel enough.
That's why you can have sex for 15 hours straight and never orgasm, because it's just you're not feeling anything. Right.
That's right. And I was in a wheelchair for several years, so I think I was on opioids for 10 years.
Yeah.
And when I decided, I just said, I'm not
enough.
It's making a mess of my life, number one.
Right.
And number two, I can't feel it, I can't even love my kids.
Right.
There's an indifference to them. And I know that that's a problem. Like that's making a mess of them, and it's making a mess of me. It's just making a mess of our whole family.
Right.
And unfortunately, the side effect of not taking the opioids was that I had to use a wheelchair because I was in pain.
Wow.
And
it totally fucks your entire nervous system. Suddenly everything hurts. I went and got a tattoo like a month or two after stopping everything, and I was like the whole time she's like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "You're kind of tatted up. Like, why is this?" I'm like, I'm okay. Right. Like, she was like, "Listen, I'm not gonna do this if you keep jumping like that, because you look like you're gonna cry. Like, I don't know what this is." And it's like everything hurts.
It makes it, I mean, literally. There was one experience I had. I took a shower, and I was having a particularly sensitive day, and it felt like little needles.
Yes.
And I mean, that's the stuff that, and I think that one of the reasons why the people who are fighting gender ideology the hardest and the most are people with trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Because they see where this is going.
Yes, we don't hate trans people. Right.
The people who understand this the most and who are fighting it the hardest are people who have been through some real shit.
Yes.
And understand that this is not the way to medicate or satiate your problems or your urges or it's not the way to fix your body dysmorphia.
Or whatever pain it is, whether it's really body dysmorphia or if it's some other pain or if it's autism in a world that doesn't understand autistic brains, or if it's, being a female in a world that, treats women as just sex objects, whatever it is. And the reason why I brought that up is because, and I think you're right, it's like I see, for example, it's like these kids that have grown this fear and this anxiety around, puberty. You're like, oh, I can just push it off a little longer, push it off. I don't have to experience things. I don't have to go through hard things. And we when we create a life where we tailor our life around avoiding all pain and all difficulty and all struggle, it actually, like I said, it doesn't make that stuff go away. It creates a bigger and bigger rain check that you're going to have to cash at some point.
Right. And
when that shit rains, that shit is going to pour.
It's a deluge.
Yeah. Yes. Really quick.
We're doing everything. We're doing everything now, and I tell people. This is the hill. Mm-hmm. Okay. You need to activate yourself.
You need to activate yourself.
Right.
I was thinking that, you said that in one of the, I was watching one of the interviews with you, and you're like, and you need to activate yourself. I was like, activate yourself. You need to activate yourself.
Those little hoodlums were playing those drums and stuff. And
you turn it into like a beat, and you just start like flowing over top of it. I was like, oh, okay.
It was kind of silly, but
she's making use out of it.
You know what I mean?
You can fight it or you can flow with it.
Yeah, we're going to go with it. Let them be my background music if that's what they want to do.
I know that's right.
I'm all about using the situation and embracing
that's
the situation
right.
and working within it.
That's right.
I still got my message across. And I didn't have to fight over what they were saying. I joined in.
That's
and
right.
I was able to a sound check.
And hey, they kind of, they had a beat going, so
right. They had a great little backup track for me.
That's right.
So whatever opposition that we get, we can turn around and use it for our own
exactly. And it like ramps people up. I know, like, I love seeing when you start getting fired up, then I start getting fired up. I'm like the dog that, like, just sees that everybody's all like wound up, so then I just start getting wound up, and it's like
I'm glad that that's the result. I mean, I wanted to cook beautiful food and grow things in my garden,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to be an activist.
Right.
You know, I got I got dragged into it kicking and screaming, and it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. In the pursuit to save my children, I also lost my fiance.
Oh
I'm
wow.
no, I was engaged, and I am not anymore.
Wow.
I
Sorry.
also, my mother died and my grandmother died a few months apart, and that was traumatic.
Oh,
All of
Gabs.
those things I had to go through, but I still pushed through those things because this is that important. And
Gabs.
it wouldn't have been that important had my own children not experienced it.
Right. That's what people don't understand. People are like, oh, oh, you're doing this, Joe. You're just trying to get some kind of attention. Like you said, I'm tired. I'm still, recovering from cancer. My kids taught me this little like video game called Clash Royale that I'm actually level 23 right now. I want to lay up in my bed and I want to like beat 12-year-olds from Guatemala. Okay,
Right.
that's on this game. That's what I want to do with my evening. But no, there's too much work to be done.
Right. I thought me and my fiance, we were going to, retire
Oh,
and
Gabs.
live this wonderful life of traveling and cooking. And I was going to wear my aprons and my pearls and everything, and all of this. And now I've become some raving lunatic. And I mean, like this whole other thing, this whole other thing that I didn't think that I was going to do, and I didn't even know that I really had the capacity to do.
You
But when your
rose.
children are being threatened, you find out what you're really made of.
Thank you. Yo, Gab. And you know what's crazy? So, and I've, a lot of just the controversy and different ideas and things that I've encountered since, having started this channel and being a part of this, having this community. And one of the things is there's a lot of different ideas about motherhood. And it's, oh, well, you know, women who are, going along with motherhood end up losing all these opportunities that they could do so many other things in life. And I was sat and thinking, I'm like, listen, I truly am grateful for women who chose to powerfully forego motherhood and to go and become these, doctors or scientists or whatever. But when I reflect on my own life as a mother of four, everything that I've done since I've become a mother has been inspired by my motherhood. It's been inspired by my drive to protect and create a world that's worth giving to my children,
Right.
whether it was before when I was in birth work taking care of other mothers, and I saw how much our birth system needed to be amended. And now this, it's so much of it comes from our job isn't done because even if we fix it for our kids, we're going to have grandkids one day,
Right.
you know?
I have my babies at home,
Yes.
I see, and I am one of those people. I thought that I was a feminist for a long time because
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you can do whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I thought that that was a good idea. I thought that that was a great idea, and I
Right.
still do. I think that that is a great idea. However, the whole idea of feminism has been distorted to some weird degree that
Yeah.
now all of the things that are bad for women, like prostitution and that sort of,
Right.
all of that supposed to be empowering. I don't
Right.
think so. That's not. That's just perpetuating a cycle of fantasy for a man. How
Right.
feminism? That how is that right? So, so I had to really reevaluate
Mm-hmm.
what it really means to be a woman,
Right.
and then come to the decision and come to the conclusion of what I really wanted as a mother
Right.
and as a woman, as a woman.
Right.
So, if you can go out and be the CEO of a company and you can do this, that, and the other, I love it.
Good.
I
Yes.
love
We need it.
it. Great. We need
We
that.
need that.
We need you to be in those fields.
Right.
But I am the bringer of life.
Yep.
I
Yep.
am the perpetuator of our species.
Yep. Amen.
I am the future of society.
Amen.
It all starts in my body.
Amen.
So that is no less, if I had to just say it, that is a greater responsibility and a greater reward than any woman could ever have hoped to achieve in their lives.
It's
So
powerful.
pulling my child from my own body with my
Oh,
own,
yes.
that is on the most basic of human experiences, that is unique to two people. You only get that one hit. You only get that one hit of that chemical of
Oxytocin.
addicting you to your child once
Yes.
in your
Yes.
entire life, and that is when your child sees you and you see your child, that you
Oh.
get from your body.
Oh,
That is
Gabs.
an experience that cannot be shared with anybody else at any other time, and I've done it 5 times.
Oh, Gabs.
So all of so when we talk about womanhood and what it means to be a woman, and there's some man who puts on a dress and throws his hair in ponytails and says, hey, I'm a woman. Nah, bitch, you're not a woman. You're not a woman until you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you can't do that, it was done to you, and that's an experience that you have only ever shared with one other person, and that is your mother.
Yep.
So those are the kinds of things that made me settle, and made me content in my heart and in my mind to say, this is what I want for my life.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I want to live it.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter who says what they think about that, I don't care.
Yep.
This is my life, and I'm going to do it the way that I want to do it from now on.
Yep.
And so, if that, however that goes, and I'm going to go with the flow as long until I die.
Oh,
And if
Gabs.
that means that if that means that I have to now become mother to society and fight for the safeguarding measures that we need
Yes.
to have, then that's what I'm going to do.
Mother to society. That's so much of what it is when we're mothers, we're not just mothers to our kids. We're mothers to all the kids in my neighborhood. Like, I'm constantly looking out for them. When
Right.
I see, these policies in our school, I know that I can, keep a close eye on my kids. But I know that there's other parents out there who are working, who don't have all the time to monitor every move their kid makes, and sometimes they rely on allowing their kid to spend time online or watch TV or whatever it is. And we need to protect those kids too. And there's certain instincts that were honed because I became a mother, that I can see danger that I wouldn't have been able to recognize before. Before I was like, yeah, that's cool. My idea of what kind of mom I was going to be before I had kids, I was like, yeah, we're going to chill. Like, it's going to be, I'm going to let my kid do all this stuff. And then once you become a mother, you're like, fuck no. Like, everyone chill the fuck out. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And and I apply that to every other child, and once you're a mother, you never cease to be one.
Right. I mean, and it's like there's a balance, right? So in an attempt to safeguard my own children, if that means that extends to the safeguarding of other children in this country, and by extension the world, because the world is watching us.
Yes, they are.
Then if that's what that means, then I'll do it.
Yep.
If the things that I say in the way that I say them makes other people feel empowered to take it upon themselves to fight for their own children, if that's the voice that I have, and that's the platform that I have, and that's my purpose, then that's what I'm doing.
Yes. Oh my God.
And so, we have to do what we're called to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't what are the odds of a biracial woman having half black kids, and half of her kids be predominantly black, and half of her kids be predominantly white, and then the white child has this crazy experience at school that sparks a movement.
Right. and you were in the right place in the right time. And I really believe, whatever, listen, and my ideas of spirituality and God, and, I haven't worked everything out for myself, but whatever it is, I believe, I don't think that we're it, I don't personally, but whatever it is, whether it's the universe, whether it's just humanity, whether it's love, whether it's God, whatever it is, something new, that we needed your voice, and it was, you rose to the call, and look at you. Once you put faith in whatever it is that's calling you, the right words just come. I mean, listening to you speak, Gabs, when I listen to you speak, it's Speaker's Corner. I mean, you light the entire place on fire. But then listening to you speak here, it's just like listening to you flow, just this like wisdom and understanding. My God, you're more than just this like inspirational, soulful voice that just booms out and gets the crowd lit up. But then there's this, really rich, thoughtful, just intelligent, aware, other side of you that understands these issues in a really complex way, and that wisdom just somehow like flows through you, It's like, how do we understand these things? I don't know. But when you open yourself up to it, it's really amazing. And I really appreciate you and the sacrifices that you've had to make to be that for us,
Well, thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. But this is something that anybody can do.
Yep.
You really do just have to just listen to the voice inside you saying, this is not right.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people all the time, you can find me if you want. All it takes is just a little bit of courage,
mm-hmm.
and to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to tolerate this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find me on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me at revfox.com, REVFOXX.com. You can find me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want help, if you want to file a lawsuit, all you need is one seat.
Or start a Speaker's Corner, or go to your own local school board. And that's what I said, I remember that one woman who was saying that both of us were on the Twitter thread. She's like, oh, I would love to do this. I just don't know any turfs in real life. And we're like, we know each other. This brought us together.
Yes. We met each other on Twitter.
Yeah.
Did this, and it was
you got us. We're right here. What are you talking about?
Yes. That was a Scottish woman, and I felt really bad because it was like, there are people out there who really do believe that they can't.
Yeah.
And that is a lie.
Yeah.
That is a lie that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
Because that's the lie that we've been told by society.
Yeah.
I was living in a motel.
Yep.
I had nothing.
Yep. And you filed lawsuits, and everyone really believes the only way to do that is if you have a bunch of money, you have a bunch of time, you have basically a law degree. I wouldn't even know what to say. I'm not the right person. I'm not the da-da-da.
I'm actually going to be giving a webinar very soon on how to build a case against your school.
Yeah. Oh my God, Gabs,
So I encourage everyone in America, because it's about American laws. So, everyone in the UK and in Canada, can take note as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is if everybody filed lawsuits against their schools, this would end.
That's what people, and that's the thing. It's like, and I've noticed our side is so much more like, and I hate to say it, their side is so rabid and so loud, and it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If we have to match that energy to a certain extent, let's let them see the power of they could sit there and make us look weak and pathetic and whatever. No, there is something really powerful about our way of life is on the line.
Right.
Our everything that we know, everything that we hold dear, our very foundation of society, our scientific method, it is all on the line. Now is the time. This is the frontier. If not now, when? If not you, who?
Right.
You don't have to be an expert. Who the hell are we? We're just some moms who thought this shit was too crazy and we got tired of it.
That's right. I have a 9th grade education and a GED.
I know, there you go.
I mean, you don't have to be a rocket science to know
Right
that a man with a penis is still a man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not, all of that, I'm not a biologist. Well, I mean, it's common sense. Okay. There's still that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you want help, you can reach me. If you're a lawyer and you want to help,
oh, God bless you, and we will love to know about you.
We always need more lawyers who are ready to take on these contingency fees.
I was supposed to be that lawyer. I took my LSATs and I killed my LSATs. I took my LSATs. A month later
go back to law school.
A month later I was diagnosed with cancer. I was so mad. But they're still valid. They're still valid. Maybe I'll just say fuck it and go.
Fuck it and go.
If you guys hype me up, then maybe I'll
go jump on in, get on in there in the Carnegie Mellon and go.
We'll go. Or you're just there's why Villanova's down the road. All right, we'll see.
You can do that. I was married. My late husband was a lawyer, and that's how I knew how to do this. But I'm ready to teach everybody everything that I know.
Yes, open source everything.
Yes.
Oh, Gabs, oh my God, you were like so much more than I expected, and I knew you were going to be amazing, but I appreciate you so much. Let me really quick read these. I had these couple of super chats from TPS that I want to read. So TPS gave $5. Thank you so much. She said, especially St. Thomas Aquinas on evil, all of CT, critical theory, race, gender, sociology, law, psych, science, even how they analyze literature, rancid emptiness. And then TPS also says idle hands, idle minds, screw tape letters. And then finally, thank you so much for all the support, too. I really appreciate that. It says feeling like it's all your fault because the evil convinces them it's their free choice when mental illness mitigates so much of the culpability. Yeah. Amen to all of that. Amen. And like I said, it's just we got to stop letting these appeals to authority, these appeals to popularity and all this other stuff and because at the end of the day, one right person is still more right than 1,000 wrong people.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
You don't have to justify your rightness either.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to sit there and argue. Right.
You don't. Yes. Mm-hmm. I just tell, you know what I mean? It's just like when I go into and I'm talking to a school board, and somebody wants to know where do I get my authority because I fucking said so. I'm a mother. That's why.
I know, that's right. Don't ever anyone and again, that's another thing that I hate about the kind of and we'll wrap this up in a minute, but the demeaning of mothers and the authority that moms have, and they're like, oh, that's just mom. What does she know? No. Right. Oh, don't let them take that from you. Don't let them take that, what that prepares you for, what that gives you. We have a right to be the mothers of our children. Don't let them steal that from you.
That's right. You tell them because I said so, and pull your pants up and go clean your fucking room. Embrace it. Use it.
Right. Because when you're a parent, you can do it your way. Right now, you're in my house.
Right.
But do you have McDonald's money? No, I didn't think so. You don't have opinion money either, so pipe down.
Right. I wear these pearls all the time, because no matter what comes out of my mouth, no matter how wide my ass gets, mm-hmm. no matter the situation, I'm still a woman.
Yep.
And I still deserve this.
Yeah.
And I still deserve to be treated like a woman. I still deserve to be heard like a woman.
Gabs. It was like the one thing that they loved to do, and they were doing this to this woman who had made a parody of Dylan, is, conflate our womanness with our, fuckability or our sexiness or our attractiveness or our youth. Right. And they're like, oh, all you old, someone was like, oh, you're an old hairy lady and you're just jealous. And I was like, I don't know. Because you know what? You're right. I could be hairy. I could be fat. I could be old, but at the end of the day, I get to wake up a woman every single day, and I don't have to do a goddamn thing to
every single cell in your body.
That's exactly right. Oh, Gabs, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, I'm going to put Gabrielle's information in the description of this video. Thank you to everybody who wrote out with us for this whole thing. I mean, I could literally talk to you for hours. I really look forward. We've got to do more stuff. Like I said, if you guys, you know, and I was telling Jen this too, if you know, I'm happy to be a liaison in Philly and this whole area. And we can also hit the main line too. There's other areas around here that I think are being heavily indoctrinated. Right. I also want to, I also want to maybe like come up with templates for parents who want to go to their school board. I really want to go to my school board, but I want to talk to you guys, just sort of like a good sort of game plan for that. And, you know, anything that you guys can use my help with, I got you. And if you ever want to come back on the channel, you have an open invitation. I love having you. I love talking to you. I love doing work with you. Very, very grateful to have connected with you. You are just like such a gift to this movement. I'm really, really grateful for all that you're doing. Yes, yes. Thanks, Gabs. Thanks, everybody. Love you guys. If you guys have any questions for Gabs, just put them in the comments section, and, you know, we'll check back. And, Gabs, I look forward to seeing you in the near future and doing more work with you. Thank you so much for everything that you brought.
Ma'am. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Gabs. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Love you. Oh, and everybody, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. That was really great. Gabs is awesome. You guys are great. Thank you.